So in 1960, it's pretty clear that the Belgians can't have any legitimate claim to the Congo. Decolonization has happened. Britain's given up most of their empire. The France hasn't really been able to keep any of their empire at all. And so the Belgians agree to give the Congolese independence, but the Belgians still have skin in the game. The Congo is really rich in another set of resources that become really important in the 20th century. So there's a part in the Congo, so kind of southeast.
Vibranium.
What's vibranium?
It's the Black Panther thing. Yeah,
Oh
sorry.
man, I haven't seen it since it was
Sneak us.
Yeah. Yeah, I jumped off that Marvel train too early.
Yeah, okay.
Well, you're on you've pretty much seen where the tide's going. So Katanga, which is southeast Congo, is rich in uranium. One of probably the richest uranium field in the world.
Yeah, wow.
And America actually used Congolese uranium in dropping the atomic bomb on Japan.
Yeah.
So now...
The Oppenheimer movie coming out. Have you seen the trailer for that?
I haven't.
Looks good.
Looks good?
Yeah, really good.
We should do a podcast reacts.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we And it's crazy, right? The Congo, if they were managed by themselves, could be the richest nation in the world.
Yeah.
When you think about and you look at they could be Qatar.
Are they
Qatar.
landlocked though?
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
Exactly. And so that is actually one of the huge limitations of them. But they are so in kind of three ways of industrial revolution. So firstly, in rubber and iron ore and that sort of thing, they're rich. Second wave of industrial revolution, when we look at nuclear energy, well, they are the mother lode of nuclear energy. They've got all the uranium in the southeast Congo. Right now, as we look into battery technology and renewables, they've got all the cobalt. And so they are so blessed in terms of natural resources, but the country's been divided by nefarious forces so that they've never been able to capitalize on it at all. And if they're able to govern independently, there's no reason to say, particularly with Africa's booming population and with the rich natural resources that they have going into the renewable era, there's no reason to say why the Congo can't actually become a really influential power in the world and a really rich power in the world and go through a boom like Australia went through in the early 2000s. So, there's a lot of skin in the game for a lot of different players. Belgium wants to keep access to the Congolese mines because that's where you can get all the natural resources from, particularly your rubber and your iron and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
A lot of Belgian mining companies and a lot of Belgians have invested in mining companies that are taking those resources. So they want this new government to be very favourable towards their mining interests in Katanga. The Americans are really invested, not so much from the wealth side of things. They've got their wealth portfolio spread across the world, but America does not want that uranium falling into the hands of anyone else. So they want the Congo to fall in line for their uranium resources. The Soviet Union obviously wants to try and get in on the Congo to try and get those uranium resources too. So there's these three different powers all pressing together and putting a lot of pressure on the Congo. So the Congo is led by, the Prime Minister is a guy called Patrice Lumumba. Really important figure in Congolese history. One of the biggest alternate history questions is what if his fate was different? And we'll come into his fate in just a second. Basically, Patrice Lumumba led a government called the MNC, which basically stood for the Congolese National Movement. Okay. If you kind of like translate it across. And the ideology, it wasn't so much left or right. It was, we want to be independent and we don't want to be under colonization anymore.
Seems reasonable.
Yeah. And so basically the biggest thing that Lumumba advocated for was independent control of resources. And one of his biggest tactical mistakes was he didn't declare who his side was. So he didn't declare whether he's Soviet Union or America. And both start to sniff around.
Yeah.
And the Americans aren't too happy with him when he isn't as harsh on the Soviet Union as what they would have liked. So, do you remember the name of that rich energy reserve in southeast Congo?
Did you mention it?
Katanga.
Katanga. Okay.
So Katanga is where the money is.
Yeah.
If you're a nefarious power and you don't like the way that Patrice Lumumba is moving this new government, you don't like the direction that they're moving in, what you can do is you can give a nudge and a wink to someone from Katanga to rise up and to create a rebellion in a separate state that will be favourable towards you.
Oh, I see.
That guy's name was Moise Tshombe.
Yeah. So who's nudged? America's nudged and winked him. Winked to him.
And the Belgians. And the Belgians have probably been more explicit in doing so.
Okay.
So Moise Tshombe starts a civil war, basically, and a war of independence for Katanga.
Yeah.
The Congo cannot afford to lose Katanga. If they lose Katanga, they're back to being dirt poor. They've got the Congo River and all the hazards that come with it, which is on the western side of the Congo.
Yeah.
But they don't have the rich natural resources that can make them a wealthy nation. It'd be like Australia losing WA.
I see.
We could not afford to lose WA.
Yeah. I saw they had like a massive surplus in their budget during the week.
Labor did, for the 4 billion one.
Yeah. 4 billion.
Yeah. That's we're gonna do. We'll talk about surplus when we do the Howard episode, because I got a lot to say on surplus and structural surplus and deficit. But you're exactly right. And one of the great reasons as to why Australia's been wealthy in the last 20 years is not so much the economic management of Labor or Liberal. It's been the mining boom.
Yeah.
And you could argue that our government squandered the mining boom, and that one of our prime ministers tried to save the mining boom by putting a mining tax, and then America came in and knifed him, but topic for another day.
Mm-hmm.
So, we have Katanga and the rebellion being led by Moise Tshombe.
Yeah.
Belgium supports Tshombe and
Yeah.
allows troops to go and support Moise Tshombe.
Ugh.
Not good.
No.
The Soviet Union goes to the UN and they're like, what the heck?
It's the kind of same thing happening as nearly 100 years earlier, right? They're fighting. They've got them fighting against each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Divide and conquer. Yeah. And the Soviet Union's like, you cannot be serious. Like, as if this is a peacekeeping mission or anything like this. That's what the Belgians were saying. We want to restore order to the Congo and prevent Congo from becoming communist, that sort of thing. Soviet Union's like, Patrice Lumumba is not our guy. We would like him to be our guy, but he has not said anything that is remotely super supportive of us. Yeah. You're supposed to be peacekeeping here.
Yeah.
How could you let this happen?
I think like within the nation, they're like realizing that, I don't know, they're just using us like to get the access to Katanga.
Oh, totally. But and here's the other thing as well. If you're a really poor nation and your biggest concern is how can I secure water for the next month?
Yeah.
Your primary concern is, they might be using us, but I'm also using them to make my ends meet as well. And that's what when we see a guy called Joseph Mobutu, he does exactly that. And he's kind of well aware that the US is using him for his stance and his influence, but he's also trying to use the US so that he can make his ends meet as well. And so, the Congolese are definitely aware of this, and most of the Congo supports Patrice Lumumba, and they're still supportive of their original prime minister. And so, basically as well, the reason why a lot of Katangans supported Tshombe is because that, like, all the mining profits were taxed by the federal government, and in their eyes, the wealth of our area is getting sent to somewhere else. If we get rid of them, we can keep the wealth of our area into fewer hands and we all be wealthier.
Rather than it going to like the other part of the Congo, it's going to Belgium though, potentially.
Well, exactly right, it is. So, but Lumumba was still, when Lumumba came in for a brief period in the early 60s, he was taxing the profits of their mines. And so the Katangans were like, well, rather than it go to the capital at the time, Leopoldville, if it stays in Katanga, that means that wealth is concentrated across fewer hands. For those of us who live in Katanga, that's better news for us because we're all wealthier.
Was it called Leopoldville?
It was.
Deary me.
Yes. And we're going to come on to how that changed.
Yeah.
So there's Stanleyville, named after the explorer.
And
then Leopoldville, named after King Leopold.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets really interesting. So Tshombe leads this rebellion. And the Soviet Union's super angry, and they've got a pretty strong case at the UN. And so the UN actually kind of steps in, and the UN's like, look, okay, Belgium, you've got to withdraw your soldiers, and we want this to be a peacekeeping mission. And the Katangan rebellion is kind of brought to an initial standstill right there and then. The CIA then try to kill Patrice Lumumba.
Okay.
Next escalation of events.
Yeah.
This isn't Alex Jones stuff. This was all revealed in the Church Committee, which was the Senate investigation into the CIA that happened in the 70s.
Yeah.
So, President Eisenhower signed off on an official plan to try and poison Patrice Lumumba's toothbrush with the deadly virus. They could not get that virus from America to the Congo.
Okay.
That was the issue.
It's transport issues.
Yeah, and it's a pretty hazardous operation.
Yeah.
So they kind of pulled the plug there. The next thing, so the president of the Congo is kind of like the king of the Congo. So a figurehead title or kind of like the governor general in Australia.
Okay.
So figurehead title representing like the head of state doesn't have any power except one power to be able to sack the prime minister. And so the president of the Congo, who's very closely linked with the US, sacks Patrice Lumumba as the prime minister.
Yeah.
To be the prime minister, you need to be the leader of the majority party. The Congolese parliament just goes straight away and says, we all support Patrice Lumumba. He's back in as prime minister. So that one didn't work.
Okay, very good.
Yeah. So they kind of thwart that straight away and they're like, absolutely not.
No.
But however, the UN supported the president's decision to sack Patrice Lumumba. And this is where you kind of sniff around like, this isn't right here.
Yeah.
Like right, left, whatever your political persuasion is or anything like that, it's very clear that this is a matter not of ideology, but of nefarious powers wanting to control Congolese resources. And so Lumumba basically is like, okay, I'm the prime minister, I'm back again. And then we see another person move in on Lumumba. His name is Joseph Mobutu. Might have heard of him before. He's probably...
Rings a bell.
Yeah, he's probably one of the more famous African dictators. Mobutu actually used to be a friend of Lumumba and a supporter of Lumumba's. So Mobutu grew up wanting Congolese independence, and that was one of his big things. The Americans they back him in trying to overthrow Lumumba. And again, this isn't conspiracy. We've kind of got records of contracts and stuff like that. And the Americans frequently met with Mobutu. Later on, Mobutu's going to end up being one of America's best friends. So Mobutu moves in on Lumumba. Lumumba has to run, and he flees.
Where does he go?
He runs far away up the Congo River.
Oh.
Yeah. No, he doesn't get eaten by crocodiles,
Okay.
don't worry. What happens is he effectively crosses the river, and he is without his family. So he comes back across the river to come collect his family. At that point, he's captured by Mobutu soldiers. America also helped Mobutu in capturing Lumumba. They did things like close off roads, share intelligence with Mobutu on where he might be, and Lumumba is captured. Lumumba is then transported to Moise Tshombe, the old enemy in Katanga, where he is brutally murdered. And the Belgians are in on this too. And Belgium has issued a formal apology. The government did a couple of years back, maybe it would have been 2015, 2016, sometime around then.
Yeah.
The Belgian government issued a formal apology for their role in helping Moise Tshombe's soldiers murder Patrice Lumumba.
Yeah.
Potentially it was the Belgian soldiers that shot the final shots at him. So Lumumba's dead.
Yeah.
Mobutu's in.
Okay.
Mobutu's the leader. And you've still got Moise Tshombe in Katanga.
Okay.
Issue for America. They've backed both of these guys. So the Belgians were the primary supporters of Tshombe.
Yeah.
And the Americans backed Mobutu, and America and Belgium are on the same ticket here. So they are kind of at a standstill and don't really know what to do. And they kind of end up supporting both sides in a civil war. And it gets a bit confusing. The Soviet Union backs a guy called Antoine Gizenga. He's kind of seen as the successor of Lumumba. And it's kind of a three-horse race between Tshombe and Katanga, Mobutu in Leopoldville, and then this guy called Gizenga, who's backed by the Soviet Union. What ends up happening is Mobutu wins the civil war. And it's a bit of a mess. The Congo's fallen into a complete crisis, but Mobutu walks away as the victor of the civil war. And America has a guy who will give their uranium to them and will kind of be America's ally in Africa. And Mobutu goes on to be known as America's crown jewel in Africa.
Okay. I feel like this is not going to end well for the people of Congo.
You have foreseen correctly.